A neighbor's choice. I'm your host, your neighbor, David Gornoski. So glad to be with you all across FM, AM, radio, on our affiliate broadcast stations. If you're listening on radio, make sure you save it to this station, because that's where we'll come each day as we have this time together. And also, if you're listening on our podcast, on all podcast platforms, make sure you share and review. And we're going to dive into the news like nobody else does, because that's what we do each and every day. We don't have any team to sell you, no tribalism that we're pushing. We just want people to treat neighbors the way they want to be treated. It's a common sense proposition. It's something that we discard every time we fall into ideology. Ideology brings out the worst in people. But when we have responsibility and we take responsibility for the things that we do, that brings out the best in us. Because even when we see these things today where people are acting in the anonymity of a crowd, whether it's the crowd of voters voting for bad stuff to be done to their neighbors, or the crowd of people rioting on different sides of the aisle, whatever it is, they feel like they can do it because everybody else is doing it around them. And that's the opposite of skin in the game. Skin in the game is when you say, you know what, I'm not going to shrink from being responsible. I'm not going to slink away from that. I'm going to stand up and be accountable for that which I want to be a part of, that which I want to happen in the world. I'll give you an example of someone who's not accountable. Someone who's not accountable is what you see with the World Health Organization. Back in January 14 of 2020, last year, 1 year ago, World Health Organization was tweeting out stuff like preliminary investigations conducted by the Chinese authorities have found no clear evidence of human-to-human transmission of the novel coronavirus identified in Wuhan, China. And this is the lie, and they lied about many, many other things. Or what you can say, they lied, or they didn't know what they're doing. They're a very, very ignorant organization. But Facebook and Twitter and Google acted as publishers for these people. And as people pointed out, Twitter didn't even bother to put a warning sign that this is fake news, or, this is a disputed fact, or a fact checker. Does that tell you everything you need to know? They don't care about the truth. They care about power, and they believe World Health Organization is where the power is, that the giant corporations and government agencies and NGOs that are all wrapped around organizations like the WHO, that's a better place to invest your time because they have more power. That's what that's all about. Otherwise, you'd think Twitter would have the audacity, or have the decency, let's say, to at least put on a little thing saying this is fact checked. This was incorrect. They can't do that because WHO represents globalism. WHO represents corporatism. WHO represents obscene amounts of profits, like shooting fish in a barrel. And it's just too intoxicating for go along, get along companies like Twitter to ever take a stand and say, you know what, this was incorrect, or this is disputed. We're not just going to go along and say, no clear evidence of human-to-human transmission. And of course, they scapegoated President Trump, but the liberal left and neoliberals were big believers in the WHO and Facebook and Twitter and all this stuff. So they will do nothing to the WHO. They'll just increase funding. Meanwhile, they were using their clout to mislead people based on ignorance at best. Garbage science at best. And using their clout that ended up costing so many people's lives, so many people's businesses, so many people's livelihoods, so many people's property, savings, wiped away because they were bungling the entire thing. And so did the Western media. Remember, the mainstream corporatist press was laughing and mocking anybody who talked about the Wuhan virus being a problem. They were downplaying that the entire time, saying, oh, this is all nonsense. And then they tried to make it a part of their little religion where they say, oh, anybody who talks about this, they're just trying to stoke racial animosity because people, because this virus is in a place called China. So they tried to fit it within their little framework, their little cookie cutter framework of how they want to impose their will onto the world by making everything about identitarianism, victimism, political correctness, speech codes. So how many people did they destroy for that? We can't even count. Meanwhile, the same geniuses that try to act like they're so serious and that they're so concerned with the truth and that they're so concerned with getting it right that they had to put fact checks on anybody and delete memes that talk about Joe Biden's criminal justice reform. I mean, his crime bill that he passed in 94. Instagram deleted memes that point out that Joe Biden backed that vicious, disgusting crime bill of 94. But these same geniuses that are supposed to be the arbiters of truth, you know what they're spending their time with now that they've impeached the president twice impotently? Now, according to People magazine, they're joining in hand with Macaulay Culkin to support editing out Donald Trump out of Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. That's the best they can do, is put stuff like this into the zeitgeist. These people are worried about, in effect, they're like a mixture between toddlers and fascists. They have the political sensibility of a fascist, but they have the seriousness of a toddler. They want to go back and delete the scene where Donald Trump helps Macaulay Culkin figure out which way to go in the hallway. Like fascists, they want to eliminate their little scapegoat. I've told you that society was founded in its origins in scapegoat rituals. And now I feel like I don't even have to present this as a theory. It's a fact. You can see it all around you. The whole obsession of people's sense of being and belonging, sense of order, sense of law, and so forth is always resting upon trying to find the most satisfying scapegoat. And once they get locked in on that witch hunt, they don't stop until they can obliterate their victim. And these people are just so toddler and immature that they're really concerned about deleting him out of Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. And Macaulay Culkin, as a person who goes along with their nihilistic toddler culture, is getting excited about joining forces with that mob. That's what they spend their time dealing with. Pathetic Todd games. Rather than deal with, well, exactly, a commenter, Luca, just said it's embarrassing. Rather than address the public health crisis of breathing disorders, metabolic disease, diabetes, etc., they are going to take a 10-second cameo out of a child's Christmas film. Exactly. And then you want to get advice from them about how to take care of your health? You want to get advice from geniuses like the WHO, which tell us lies and misinformation, fake news, garbage, pseudoscience, trash, telling us, oh, on January 14th, while they're busy impeaching Donald Trump. Back then, the WHO was busy saying, oh, nothing to see here, it's fine, no human-to-human transmission. These people have no moral fabric whatsoever. They can't even admit that their sacred cows like the WHO are a total joke. You know, an intelligent adult can say Donald Trump made mistakes because that's what government does, and that's what government bureaucrats who want to centrally plan life. Donald Trump makes mistakes, and the WHO made horrible mistakes. But these people are not adults. They cannot think like adults. They don't want to think like adults. They willfully choose to be ignorant and foolish in almost everything they spew out of their mouth. So they're worried about Macaulay Culkin's Home Alone 2 and making sure, like little mean girls, oh, yeah, Donald Trump must be removed from the film. They're like Nazi mean girls. Remember the movie Mean Girls? They're like a Nazi version of that. That's what the left is. It's pathetic. That's all they have. That's why they're a dying ideology. If they had so much power, they wouldn't be so try hard. Everybody who's independent and moderate, the people that I talk to, they're all tired of it. They're like, these people are so pathetic. They're so try hard. They're so preachy. They're so dogmatic. They're so pushy. Every movie, they're pushing the little catechesis, their catechism. Oh, look, one little tiny, movie after another tiny little movie. We got to delete scenes of Donald Trump in it because that'll show them. Oh yeah, that's so dumb. Their whole mind is like framed by whatever's on the TV. Hollywood, Captain Planet, Rice Krispie treats. This is what these people operate. Aunt Jemima cereal or syrup. Rice Krispie treats is something they want to get rid of. There's too many white elves, they said. This is how stupid these people have determined themselves to be. And it's not an intellectual issue. It's a maturity issue. It's a wisdom issue. These are fools, is what ancient texts would call these people. Fools. Actually, they're an insult to fools because they don't even have the excuses that the fools of the past had. There's just too much abundant information to discern from the past of history that you would expect humanity to move on beyond this kind of childish games. We have people having, as our commenter suggested, diabetes and breathing disorders and metabolic disease, and these folks have nothing to offer you. They don't have anything to offer your family. They don't have anything to offer for those who are suffering. But hey, we're going to delete Donald Trump out of Home Alone 2. That's the genius of these bigots. And they want to make themselves look like, oh, we've got the sophisticated arguments. You have nothing. You're out of ammo. And we're moving on. We'll be right back after these short messages. Who is your neighbor? Dave and Wally are team drivers for Oakley Transport. One day, they came across a very serious accident on the highway. Some might pass on by, but Dave and Wally saw there was no time to waste. They jumped into action and saved 2 people's lives with moments to spare. That's the kind of courageous love we need more of today. It reflects the respected culture Oakley Transport develops with their driving professionals. CDLA licensed drivers. Join Oakley family farm raised high quality grass-fed beef. That's what sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pastures beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR. Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck in a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
You can't have a fresh outlook on the new year if you're staring through a chipped or cracked windshield. Autoglass America will fix it and give you up to $150 cash back to help pay holiday bills. With qualifying insurance, we'll come to you with mobile service and install a premium quality replacement with a lifetime warranty at no cost to you. Get a great outlook on the new year with a new windshield and New Year's cash from Autoglass America. 813-96-GLASS. 813-96-GLASS.
So maybe those ideologies like political correctness and its more fundamentalist, ugly mutant child, social justice ideology, critical theory, maybe they're just like junk food. You know, everybody knows, yeah, it's probably not good for me, but they, you know, it's addictive and people want to keep it up. But that is in contrast to reality. You know, we comment on what they're doing just to show people what's going on there. But we always want to give people real news as a contrast. Dr. James D. Nicolantonio, he made a comment on his page that I thought just kind of succinctly demonstrates the kind of conversations we need to be having once we can get past the noise of the clowns and the toddlers who are concerned about Home Alone 2 and Rice Krispie Treats and Aunt Jemima syrup. And what dog Joe Biden's going to have as he keeps everybody locked up and keeps everybody in occupation around the world. It says oxidized omega-6 fats. This is what Dr. James says. Oxidized omega-6 fats are one of the most toxic molecules in the human body. They cause heart disease, high blood pressure, weight gain, insulin resistance, cancer, dementia, neurodegenerative diseases, and the list goes on. And he's published scientific papers to demonstrate that. He says, drop the omega-6 seed oils and regain your health. You know, the WHO is saying for you to eat seed oils. So not only did they totally lie and misinform billions of people when they needed to be stepping up to the plate the most, they lied about human transmission of the virus in January and so on. They also lied about the underlying health effects of eating seed oils. They promote eating, which is just based on garbage. There's all the scientific literature, all the published scientific papers you read, when you really drill into it, confirms what Dr. James Nicolantonio, or whatever, I have to ask him how to say his last name. We'll have him on the program, as we've had many of these pioneering scientists and doctors. But that's where you get these insulin resistance, the dementia, neurodegenerative diseases, heart disease. It's these omega-6 vegetable oils, these seed oils. And you find those things in all kinds of surprising places. Sometimes you'll find them in a spice mix, and you look at it and it says canola oil. I guess they found a way to put it in that. Or you find it in, you know, crackers and doughs, find it in you know, baked goods and processed goods. They don't put butter in most. If you buy some bread at a grocery store, most of the time it's not going to be made with butter. It's going to have vegetable oils in it. They try to use the marketing term plant-based oils now because the little trendies think that plant-based is somehow like it just triggers euphoria, like the little marketing gimmick is supposed to do. But these plant-based oils are the same toxic industrial waste sludge that they've been killing people with for decades already with vegetable oils. And ignorance is deadly. And the media sows ignorance. They get us focused on Home Alone 2 and wearing a stupid mask while you cut your grass out in your backyard so the virus doesn't jump out at you from the rose bush. But they have nothing to tell you when it comes to the truth about the foundation of these comorbidities, which causes these 99% of the deaths of this virus, from this virus. They don't want to talk about it. And it's so patently obvious as to why. Big soy, big corn, big vegetable oil, big processed food, big sugar, big grain. They own the United States government, and they own garbage organizations like the WHO, and they own the papers that are being pushed oftentimes to give us misinformation. and they buy advertisements on these television networks and these Facebook companies and so forth. And these people have a vested, biased interest in ever telling you the truth. If they told you the truth, we wouldn't need them, would we? If we found out that most of the diseases that we're scared about, both the acute viruses that we're dealing with now and these chronic comorbidities, they're all tied together to proper nutrition, proper health, and people can debate the issues about this thing or that thing, but if we all agree on this one common denominator and get rid of this first completely, which is the oxidized omega-6 fats that we accumulate from the seed oils that are in so much of American food. Go look. I mean, you can see, I've had Dr. Chris Kenobi on my show, like Big Kenobi. His name is Knobbe, I believe. And he's a ophthalmologist in Colorado. And he's done fantastic work on macular degeneration and other illnesses, all being correlated exactly with the rise of seed oils into a population. You can look at it in Japan. You can take a look at Okinawa, and you can see how they had the highest centenarian, population proportionally in the world. I believe they had one of the highest, oldest living populations in Okinawa, and they were not eating what? They weren't eating the seed oils. They weren't eating the vegetable oils, the plant-based oils, as the trendies are excited about. And so therefore, they were having healthy life, and they were eating a lot of sweet potatoes, and they were eating, some animal fat, and they were doing just fine. But they've demonized animal fat in the West. And now, actually, you can see as they introduce the vegetable oils into Okinawa with the fried foods and the processed foods, and the crackers and cookies and breads and things that have the canola oil or soybean oil or whatever oil added to it, they have seen their decline of their longer lifespan, that they've lost that they're becoming more closer and closer to the West in terms of this. And Japan has seen the similar thing. This is the kind of stuff that CBS could talk about if they were adults. What's stopping them? What's stopping them from talking about real issues? Why is it that a guy on a radio program has to say this and it has to be considered like, wow, that's a little bit out of left field. Where'd you come up with that topic? Yeah, well, it happens that we're having a horrible political pandemic, a horrible disaster with people having fear, paralyzing fear for a virus that should be easy to defeat if we were not hurting our bodies decade after decade with vegetable oils that are oxidized and cause all kinds of inflammation and toxicity in the body, messing with our DNA. And people don't even think a thing about it. They just put on their mask and keep guzzling down the garbage. And they think, oh, well, I don't have any signs of diseases now, so it must be okay for me to keep eating it. No, it's not. You got to look at the data. You're not going to get the data on these garbage media outlets. Back in a second.
There is all kinds of lunacy going on. The madness of 2020.
Weekdays 11 to 2.
I'm just so fed up with these Democrats. It's unbelievable.
Get it straight from Chris Plant.
They're so hypocritical. It makes me sick.
It's the Chris Plant Show.
This has just got me going on.
And the left is waging war against the police in the United States.
Telling it like it is.
You should be thanked profusely for getting to the point. You're a voice of reason in the sea of idiots.
The Chris Plant Show. Weekdays 11 to 2. News Talk 1040 WHBO.
While law enforcement step up security in the wake of the U.S. Capitol siege and ahead of the inauguration, the nation also dealing with this pandemic. Nearly another 1 million Americans filed for first-time jobless claims last week. Tonight, President-elect Joe Biden will address the nation.
Biden has said it's his number one concern, getting the virus under control. Well, tonight he'll lay out his plan for doing so, as well as how to prop up the economy sagging under the weight of COVID-19. It's expected he'll announce plans to speed up vaccinations and provide more economic stimulus. But Biden's biggest challenge might be getting people to follow his lead. He's expected to push a renewed dedication to mask wearing and social distancing. But in a country filled with skepticism and COVID fatigue, Morale and dedication to the cause may be his biggest hurdle. Mark Remillard, ABC News.
In Virginia today, Governor Ralph Northam says his state has distributed its entire supply of vaccines, and anyone 65 or older can get one. Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
Hello, David Gornoski here. You're listening to A Neighbor's Choice. And so, for those listening on radio, you heard the news break again. I always love it because it's like a counterpoint to whatever I'm saying. They just say the groupthink response. And the news anchors were saying on ABC News Radio, Joe Biden's going to tell us what he's going to do to save us from the coronavirus and prop up the economy, as if government can do any of that. And I don't care if it's Trump saying he can do it or Biden. Government cannot prop up the economy. They can make it look like they're propping it up by giving it heroin and making it look like it's got, it's alive, but it's actually a drug that will kill the patient. It's a masking of symptoms that are underlying. And they say, well, his biggest challenge is in a country full of skeptics and people with fatigue, can he help bring out morale to fight for the cause? Why don't they actually be media? Why can't they pretend at least to be media outlets and say, but other people say that government should not be propping up the economy, that the debt is actually going to destroy people's savings. It's going to wipe out their purchasing power over time. It's going to redistribute wealth from those who get the newly created money for spending programs first and those who get it trickle down after. Why can't they say, others say? They can't even give you a legitimate critique like I'm giving you. They are nothing but trash state media Pravda garbage. I have no risk for a single thing they say. No one should. Nobody who cares about progress, nobody who cares about love and compassion should give these people any amount of credibility, because they don't have any. So why give something that's not there? There's nothing to give to them. They have nothing credible to say. They don't provide a counterpoint. They say Joe Biden's toughest thing is going to be having to get morale up for the cause. What cause? The cause of stupid fake science that has based on nothing. It's failed. Countries, states in America with harsh lockdowns like New York have higher death rates right now than Florida does, and Florida is not nearly as bad as that. None of their stuff makes any sense. The Denmark study showed that the mask doesn't help stop the transmission of the virus. The Wuhan study showed that there's very little evidence of asymptomatic spread. Over and over again, when science speaks, it invalidates the stupidity and the hysteria. And the media can't even say that. Why can't they do one segment where they say, hey, some people say, hey, maybe we should watch out for seed oils. Just put that thought out there because it's true. Why are they so allergic to the truth on every issue? Is the media right about anything they talk about? Do they get nutrition right? No, they get it dead wrong. They tell you to do the exact opposite. Are they right about, God? No, they're always attacking anything that has to do with God. Are they right about the family? No, they attack families. Every cartoon character, every movie is a mockery of the family. Do they talk about femininity and females in a positive light? No, they're always discouraging femininity. They're always hating on femininity. They're always telling people that if you want to be somebody, you have to be working at a giant corporation or something like that, government bureaucracy or something. Almost everything that they promote, I can't even think of anything they get right. Do they get the weather right? I mean, every time you turn on a nature show, every segment you see, you try to watch a nature show because you think, okay, this is a last place where you can hear their garbage nihilistic culture. But every segment they talk about, it's a hysteria. Every segment, walrus burps. They say this walrus is burping because humanity is destroying their habitat. They go to the next scene. A giraffe stumbles. The giraffe is stumbling because humanity is devouring every giraffe imaginable. I mean, everything is this insane Gaia stupid worship. But it all goes back to, you strip the Gaia worship, that's for the dumb people that they get into, buy into their stupid cause. Underneath it, it's just a racket. It's just another corporate fascist racket. Planet of the Humans by Michael Moore was a fantastic documentary that explored the fake green energy industry. And every nature show you watch now, they show, here's a jellyfish. The jellyfish got eaten by a shark too fast. You know why? Because you're a capitalist. That's what they tell you in every scene. Go to the next scene. A bunny devoured by a wolf. They say the bunny got eaten by a wolf. He would have been having enough room that he wouldn't have been eaten so fast if you were not a free market believer. Please surrender your liberty, please. Next scene. A blue whale swims by. Blue whales typically don't swim that slow. The reason why they're swimming slow is because you believe in private contracts. Please surrender your private contract. And then they trot out David Attenborough, right? At 107 years old, and they're using this guy. Hey, look at me. I'm like a Yoda figure for humanists and globalists. Look at me. Please just listen to me as Yoda, and just get rid of capitalism, please. Please elect people who are corporate fascists like Al Gore. Please, thank you. I mean, it's so dumb, you know, and people who are like saying, like, what's wrong with you people? Why can't you chill on your religion? Why do you have to push your stupid religion and your trivialities on every single aspect of existence? I mean, look at what they do in school. This story is a thread from Christopher Rufo. He's been on different platforms as a figure challenging the critical theory that I mentioned earlier, social justice. He says, a Cupertino elementary school forces third graders to deconstruct their racial and sexual identities, then rank themselves according to their, quote, power and privilege, unquote. I've obtained exclusive whistleblower documents from inside the classroom. They will shock you. First, the teacher told the 8 and 9-year-old students that they live in a dominant culture of white, middle-class, cisgender, educated, able-bodied, Christian, who created and maintained this culture in order to hold power and stay in power. No, they're projecting their worldview. I've told you before, their highest goal in their religion is power for power's sake. So again, you give someone a hammer and everything suddenly becomes a nail. All they want is power, power, power. They get a little taste of it more and more in their little political correctness ideology. It's very fashionable with the giant corporations. And so they want more power. The image from the text says dominant culture, the culture that is considered normal, created and maintained by those who belong in this culture to hold power and stay in power. The dominant culture in America, white, middle class, cisgender. Your gender identity matches with the sex you were assigned at birth. Educated, able-bodied, Christian, English speaker. Reading from this book is anti-racist. The teacher taught the children the theory of intersectionality and claimed that those with privilege have power over others and that folk with an X who do not benefit from their social identities have little to no privilege and power. The teacher asked students to create an identity map listing their race, class, gender, religion, family structure, and other characteristics. They were told to circle the identities that hold power and privilege. And, you know, they talk this big game, but the moment someone like Candace Owens, who's a black female, says, I don't agree with your ideology, they try to ban her, they try to mock her, they try to attack her. The moment she, as a woman, criticizes one of their darling celebrities as a man for wearing a dress, I don't even remember the guy's name, but they made a big hashtag campaign trying to bully her by the hundreds of thousands. She's a black female. How come she is not given respect? They don't believe any of the garbage they're saying. It's only for power. That's it. They just said that you're supposed to look at their little stupid children's class that they're teaching this dumb curriculum. They're saying put down all the things, identity map, list your race, your class, your gender, your religion, family structure, other characteristics. And as far as I understand, I don't know too much about Candace Owens' background, but I believe she said she had people in poverty around her growing up in her family. and that she was closer to her grandfather, right? So she had some family structure issues. I don't know if she's always been a Christian. Maybe she wasn't. If she wasn't at some point, therefore, she gets a victim point there. Her gender, right? Female. Class, she was not rich, I don't believe. And her race, she's African American, right? But yet they vilify the woman if she says, well, I don't agree with John Maynard Keynes, or I don't agree with Karl Marx, a dead old white European guy. But yet these critical theory people who are saying if you put all these little characteristics together, that means you're in a better place than the people who don't have this many characteristics of victim points. Yet she has the victim points and they treat her worse than anything. So if you follow their textbook, apparently it doesn't work out in real life once these liberals get a hold of you. If you don't submit to their corporate fascism. If you don't care about Home Alone 2. If you care more about understanding the science of omega-6, oxidized oils in the body that the government has been subsidizing with your money and pumping it into your food by making it extremely cheap using your tax dollars to make it so. If you care about real things instead of their stupid stuff, then they will attack you viciously. Even if you have the identity points that they're saying or make you a victim. In a rated assignment, the children were asked to write short essays describing which aspects of their identities hold power and privilege and which are oppressed, in effect ranking themselves according to the intersectional hierarchy. See, they say that the left is against hierarchy. I don't agree with that. They're against a hierarchy that puts restraints on their power lust or their self-worship of their own pleasure or whatever it is. Parents at the school were scandalized. They were basically teaching racism to my 8-year-old, said one parent who rallied a half dozen families to protest the curriculum and demand a meeting with the principal. One Chinese American parent compared the training to the Cultural Revolution. Quote, growing up in China, I had learned it many times. The outcome is the family will be ripped apart. Husband hates wife. Children hate parents. I think it is already happening here. Luckily, the group of Asian American parents was able to shut down the training from the school, but they are worried that the Cultural Revolution is spreading. Quote, we think some of our school board members are critical race theory activists and they must go. So you see, this is what, people who live in these hellhole communist experiments, because it was a living hell to be under Chairman Mao. That's a hell of a hole to be in. And they say what they saw there. Growing up in China, I had learned it many times. The outcome is the family will be ripped apart. Husband hates wife. Children hate parents. I think it is already happening here. So people who actually live in the real world, people who actually grew up with oppression, totally reject the garbage offered by the corporate fascist neoliberals. It reminds me, by the way, of the passage by Jesus that says, Father shall be divided against the son against the father, the mother against the daughter, and the daughter against the mother-in-law against her daughter-in-law, and the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. But see, they're creating division with power in mind. And what Jesus is referring to is the divisions that take place in a society when you stop the bloodlust, you stop sacrificing some for some greater fake good, and you start loving your neighbor and loving your enemy, because that will upset the hierarchy of power hunger. So there is division in the Chairman Mao sense, as the Chinese Americans alluded to, when you try to do a cultural revolution and pit people against each other for power. But there's also a division that takes place and is taking place as an effect of the spread of the gospel story and the history of the world, because it undermines the peace that used to be binding people together based on shared mythology, shared narratives about who's the deplorables and who's not, and who's the insiders and who's the outsiders. And when you start loving enemies and teaching people to love and forgive your enemies and forgive those who oppress you, that scrambles that hierarchy and that scrambles that mythology and that narrative all up. We'll take a quick break and return live on A Neighbor's Choice. Email me hello@aneighborschoice.com. Back in just a second. David Gornoski here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals, join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER. Hello, this is David Gornoski with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a sixth-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR. Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck in a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender. Tina online says wearing a mask to protect against the virus is like trying to stop mosquitoes with a chain link fence, in my opinion. Hunter's Dream replies, Tina, it's true. Remember, in the beginning, we were mocked for wanting to wear even an N95 mask. They said we're too dumb to wear them correctly. But that's the only mask that has shown any evidence of, potentially reducing transmission, and nobody's wearing those things. And yet they just demand religious fealty to a superstition that allows people who are miserable losers to bully people and browbeat people and ostracize people and make people feel excluded. So they talk a big game with their whole thing about we are for inclusion. We want people to feel loved. We don't want people to feel excluded. But everything they do is all about giving people justification to exclude and belittle and humiliate and browbeat and ostracize and scapegoat. They want you to feel the feeling of a scapegoat. Set outside the camp, set outside the town, excluded from common life, excluded from conversation and love. And you see what they do with Donald Trump. They want him blacklisted from Home Alone 2, from the PGA. They're cutting him off from all of his banks. For what? Again, the man has killed less people than Barack Obama or George W. Bush or any of those clowns before him. He's freed more people for first-time nonviolent offenses than anybody, Barack Obama, Bush, or any of those guys. Those guys are sacred saints for their garbage failing religion. And somebody who dares to speak openly about his distrust for the endless wars and dares to challenge the narratives of framing things that DC uses, and he's anathema to these people. He's to be a scapegoat. He is to be a man without a country, as General Mattis says. Look at the New York Times. They said that they are the arbiters of truth. And look at how they talk about the future of the coronavirus now that their scapegoat's out of the way. Donald Trump. An annoying childhood infection. That's the future. Once immunity is widespread in adults, once it is, the virus rampaging across the world will come to resemble the common cold, scientists predict. Oh, isn't that convenient? Isn't that convenient? You've been saying what everybody's been suggesting all along. And all they've done with lockdowns is delay herd immunity, and which ends up killing people who are vulnerable, because the more times you got to go out because life events happen, you got to go out, or the more times you see people and they've been blocked, and all the young people have been blocked from being able to interact and do things and get on with life, you've slowed down the process of herd immunity. And the more chances there are for people with immune compromisation due to eating government food, government nutrition advice, let me tell you, because they listen to the garbage WHO and the food pyramid and eat canola oil and soybean oil and tons of sugar and flour, they are in a delicate situation. Because they listen to single payer nutrition advice, they're in a delicate situation. Because if they're advanced in age, all that toxic DNA mutation from the seed oils that your government steals your money for to prop up and put in your food, and then use your money to demonize garbage science papers that demonize animal fats. So they use your money to demonize the food that's good for you, and then they use your money to subsidize the food that's trash for you. And the WHO and the food pyramid and all these garbage organizations tell you to gobble up all that garbage food. And then if you're elderly, that means you've got decades and decades of this DNA mutation, all the carcinogens, all the garbage food that they've been propping you into eating for your whole life. And then because they do their stupid lockdowns that end up eliminating Amazon's competitors and Walmart's competitors, they delay the herd immunity because they keep young people away from getting around each other, which means the people who were screwed over by their garbage single-payer nutrition are more likely to have a bad case of this virus. Isn't that pathetic, man? Don't you wish everybody was talking about it like this? Because then I wouldn't have to be the only guy doing it to connect the dots like this. Yeah, you got some podcasts and scientists who talk about the seed oils and that stuff like that, but they're afraid to get into the political stuff because nobody wants to get into that mess. It's just a mess. It's a garbage wasteland, right? So they're like, I'm going to stick in my lane and talk about, ancestral eating or all this stuff. And I've had a lot of those guys on my show, and I will continue to do so. But somebody's got to be the guy who can connect this stuff to the mainstream, which is why I'm on FM and AM broadcast radio in major cities. That's why I do this, so that the people who are not in the podcast bubbles have a chance to hear these truths connected to the lies, so you can see the contrast between the lies of the WHO and the New York Times and Facebook and Twitter and Google and Nancy Pelosi versus the truth. I'm giving you kind of like a one-stop shop where I'm getting the conversations with all these different voices in science and nutrition and so forth, and I'm trying to connect it together for the mainstream masses, because that's how you shift culture, is you get folks at the grassroots level to let go of the sacred cows, right? The whole point of being an imitator of Jesus is that we let go of sacred cows that are based on violence. And at the end of the day, the only reason why people are eating seed oils to the degree that they do is because of violence, because of the state stealing our money by force for decade and decade after decade, and then giving it to people who did not earn your money. They did not earn your money. They did not do your labor at your job, but they take your money through the fiction of the state that cronies like Nancy Pelosi do. They do this fiction their whole life. Paul Ryan, these little Muppets. And they steal your money and they give it to very, very rich millionaire and billionaire industrial seed oil companies who then pump it into your body in all the products that people want. And the thing that is horrible is the seniors who've had that for decades. And it seems to be just anecdotally that the baby boomers who are now getting into their senior years are getting diseases and aging related comorbidities faster than like the greatest generation and the silent generation did. And I think that's because the greatest generation and the silent generation were more likely to have consumed ancestral foods at a younger age. So they were starting off, at least their first formative years, more likely to eat butter rather than margarine. Whereas boomers, by then, you could still get butter perhaps or not, but it was more likely that maybe the margarine was now starting to take hold of the dinner plate. And other oils that are baked into the breads and so forth too, these industrial linoleic acid oils. But you can see the decline that the greatest generation and the silent generation, they were living much longer lives. And I think it's because they were cooking with lard and fat and not eating the industrial vegetable seed oils like baby boomers, and even more so now with Gen X and millennial and so forth. So we're living in a very, Dr. Chris Kenobi says, he said on my program, I believe, that we're living in this giant experiment, this human experiment, and it's a horrible, horrible experiment, and we need to stop it. But people can't seem to have this big level conversation. And that's why I continue to pull it together, bring it all together, and that's why we do what we do. So I hope it's of benefit to you. And again, I'm not here to be your guru about every little detail, but I present people with the credentials and the scientific papers and the MDs and the PhDs. I present them on our website, neighborschoice.com. And it's not just nutrition, because I also provide to you understanding of physics and nuclear energy. And that's what we're going to do in just a short moment. We're going to take a break. And for those who are listening on podcast, you'll have to watch the next episode. But for those listening live on radio or online, stay tuned, because when we return, we're going to have Science and You. And that's where we have an acclaimed physicist, theoretical physicist, and my chief of science advisor, Dr. Wei-Ping Yu, who will join us, and we'll talk about science news from his fresh perspective, that just like we do with nutrition science, we can also find amazing solutions right under our noses if we're not afraid to think for ourselves and take those sacred cows down a notch. They don't have to own our lives. I'm David Gornoski. Thank you for this time. We'll be back in just a moment. But for now, Godspeed.
Home for news, talk, and information. 1040 WHBO Pinellas Park, Tampa Bay's all new News Talk 1040.
It's the only way I get news.
From ABC News, I'm Michelle Franzen. The nation under threat on numerous fronts. Up to 21,000 National Guard troops will fortify Washington, D.C., leading up to the inauguration. More U.S. troops than are on the ground in Syria, Afghanistan, and Iraq combined. This time, though, to protect from domestic threats.
Razor wire is now being installed around the Capitol. More than a week after the riotous mob stormed the building, a new FBI assessment obtained by ABC News said anti-government or anti-authority extremists are likely to use violence in response to what they perceive as the illegitimate transfer of power from the current president to a new administration. The FBI said it remains concerned about multiple armed protests and rallies planned at the U.S. Capitol and potentially at all 50 state Capitol buildings. The main worry, the proximity between government officials and people with guns. Aaron Katursky, ABC News, New York.
In a few hours, President-elect Joe Biden will address the nation on the other threat facing the country, the pandemic.
Joe Biden's staggering $1.9 trillion request includes getting out vaccines faster, more testing, getting children back to school, all in the first 100 days. The Biden plan would also deliver $1,400 per person stimulus checks added to the $600 already sent, and expanding state unemployment benefits through next fall. That includes the $400 additional each week from Congress.
ABC's Andy Field. Out of all the violence from the U.S. Capitol attack, one officer's courageous acts being singled out.
Representatives Nancy Mace, Emmanuel Cleaver, and Charlie Crist have introduced a bill to award the Congressional Gold Medal to Eugene Goodman, the U.S. Capitol police officer captured on video leading the mob away from the Senate chamber. His story got a lot of attention after reporter Igor Bobich shared a video of Goodman's encounter. Bobich has credited the officer with saving his life, and the officer has been applauded for buying lawmakers enough time to evacuate the Senate chamber.
You're listening to ABC News.
This is an advertisement. Paid non-attorney spokesperson Ricky LeBlanc, admitted in Massachusetts only. Sokolov Law, LLC, Chestnut Hill, Mass. Paul J. Morgan, Winter Park, Florida. Greg Hoppy, New Jersey. Michael Bro Gonzalez, admitted Louisiana. While this firm maintains joint responsibility, most cases of this type refer to other attorneys for principal responsibility. Mesothelioma. If you know what mesothelioma is, you or someone you love has likely been affected by this devastating cancer. You may be entitled to compensation. Call Sokolov Law today. 1-800-578-2400. The only known cause of mesothelioma is asbestos exposure. Thousands of U.S. veterans and trade workers are at risk for the disease. Nearly $30 billion in court-ordered trusts has been set aside to pay money to asbestos victims. If you or a loved one has been diagnosed with mesothelioma, call now. You may be able to receive compensation without ever going to court or filing a lawsuit. Call for a free legal consultation at 1-800-578-2400. That's 1-800-578-2400. 1-800-578-2400.
Cindy McCain is facing censure by the Republican Party in Arizona for recognizing President-elect Joe Biden's victory. Appearing on ABC's The View, McCain said the GOP needs to put country over party.
When I began in the Republican Party officially, the Republican Party was the party of inclusion. It was the party of generosity. It was a party of country first. We have lost our way. We have lost our way.
The wife of the late Senator John McCain endorsed Joe Biden for president. The UK bans flights from the South America area following the discovery of a new COVID variant first identified in Brazil.
The new variant that experts say could be more infectious was discovered last month in Manaus, the Amazonian capital so hard hit in last year's first wave of the pandemic that it had to resort to mass graves. The city is now in the grips of a devastating second wave, with reports that some hospitals are running out of oxygen. The neighboring state of Pará has announced it's banning the entry of boats from Amazonas in a bid to stop the spread of the new variant, and concern is growing for the indigenous tribes located along the Amazon River. Claire Bauer, ABC News, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil.
Despite the pandemic, millions are expected to gather along the Ganges River in northern India for a Hindu festival, the pilgrimage, known as the largest gathering of people in the world. In 2019, nearly 55 million people made that journey during the 2 months. This is ABC News.
For over 40 years, Ray Reynolds has helped customers get millions in credit. It's no wonder why they call him the godfather of credit. Ray Reynolds will get your score above 720. Do you need $50,000 of corporate credit? By using corporate credit, you can finance a business, buy real estate and stock under a corporation. Now you can meet Ray Reynolds on his daily webinar at 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. Monday through Friday. Go to rayswebinar.com and check out his free, very informative webinar, or call 800-490-4140 now. That's rayswebinar.com, or call 800-490-4140.
Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
Who is your neighbor? Dave and Wally are team drivers for Oakley Transport. One day, they came across a very serious accident on the highway. Some might pass on by, but Dave and Wally saw there was no time to waste. They jumped into action and saved 2 people's lives with moments to spare. That's the kind of courageous love we need more of today. It reflects the respected culture Oakley Transport develops with their driving professionals. CDLA licensed drivers. Join Oakley Transport today for a rewarding career. Visit oakleytransport.com. That's oakleytransport.com. From the heart of Central Florida, you're listening to the most electrifying show in media. A Neighbor's Choice I'm your host, your neighbor, David Gornoski. So glad to be with you here. It's our Thursday show, which means we're going to hear from two types of topics. We're going to hear from science, and then in the second half of this broadcast, we're going to hear from the Mises Institute, which will give us an economic perspective about the news of the day. But now we turn for Science and You. That's our science segment that we do each week. And it's a time for us to look at the headlines of science and technology with hope in our hearts, with determination to think for ourselves, and be able to go past sacred cows so that we can look for the truth wherever it lands us. And to do so, we have our physicist friend and chief science advisor for A Neighbor's Choice, Dr. Yu. How you doing?
Thank you, David, for having me again. I'm doing very well. Thank you.
Well, very good. It's always great to hear from you. And this segment is always a breath of fresh air for folks who are so inundated with negativity in the news cycle. People have a hard time getting along. But you know how we solve that is by working on big problems together, solving diseases, solving pollution, energy issues, abundance issues, scarcity issues. We can alleviate those things, which makes people feel relief, which allows people to not be so tense and at each other's throats all the time about every little issue. So in that spirit, let's look at some of the news going on together. We have a story in the yahoo.com from USA Today that says, far out, astronomers discover the oldest, most distant supermassive black hole in Quasar in the universe. They have found they announced this on Tuesday of this week, and at more than 13 billion years old, the article says, the black hole is the earliest yet seen, giving astronomers insight into the formation of massive galaxies in the early universe. What do you think of this, Dr. Yu?
Well, this story remind me like 80 years ago when I was searching when we discussed the first light of first light of universe. At that time, it said the oldest light we ever detected is 11 billion years ago. So now, apparently, the instrumentation and the scientists get smarter, instrumentation get better, so we detect the oldest, the oldest light, the oldest object. And most distant is 13 billion years ago. So that's a scientific achievement. So just give you a perspective. The Earth, the universe exists only 13.8 billion years ago. So this is almost reached to the beginning of the universe. Based on the new technology, it's about 670 million years after the Big Bang. So if we believe the Big Bang theory, so universe born at the Big Bang, that's 13.8 billion years ago, and this is only like a 5% after Big Bang, we detect the light or the object from the air. Mm-hmm. So here talking about so now talking about why you can detect the light from that old. So this story tells you, they said that we discover oldest and most distant massive black hole. So if you think about it, in order to discover the most distant light, of course the light has to have powered by very strong electromagnetic force, right? So that's a black hole. Okay, so it has to be massive. Otherwise, the light cannot propagate without interference continuously, from the origin and to our observation Earth. And the second thing they said, besides the massive black hole, there's a quasar. Quasar that's just brightest stars, around the black hole. Okay, so the quasar, the most bright, shining object. If you look at that one, of course they're always side by side together. So that's the story.
Well, there's another black hole story we have, but this one's more interesting to me. This is in the sun. And it says, holy moly, scientists baffled after supermassive black hole at center of a distant galaxy goes missing. So how do you miss? How does a black hole go missing?
That will touch the foundation of the physics. So right now, the current physics theory talking about all the galaxies at every single center of galaxy. There is a gigantic supermassive black holes, because they said the reason galaxy can hold together is not because the materials in the galaxy attracting each other. No, it's because we have a supermassive black hole at the center of the galaxy. That what is called 1.7 billion times higher mass than the sun, or multi-billions times sun, to power the holding galaxy together. For the Milky galaxy, they're talking about 4.3 million mass of sun in order to hold the Milky Way together. But this story tells you, see, the Milky, they discovered, that's a professor, from Michigan University. He studied this galaxy called A2261, find the black holes missing, and he used every single tool to find out, confirm there's nothing at the center of the galaxy. So he published this one saying, black hole missing. So let me tell you, if a black hole missing, which I believe that's true, it's because we believe black hole does not even exist, okay? If they discover black holes missing with all the modern tools, so then you were the question, without a supermassive black hole, what holds the galaxy together in order to rotation that fast? It cannot. That means just like the sun, without the center, the sun, the solar system will be dissolved. Everything will be flying away, right? So based on this discovery, it confirmed our prediction, say, black hole is something, this kind of object is never existed. Based on the theory, black hole is not a finite object. It is only a single point. It's a zero volume, a point object with an infinite number or some gravity. So this is theoretical results and does not reflect a shred of the reality. So that's why. So I believe a black hole does not exist. However, people say, you said it does not exist. We interviewed the professor from Harvard University, the chairman of astronomy department. And he said, yes, we took a picture of a black hole. How could a black hole does not exist? Is that right?
Yeah.
Let me tell you what they took the picture. The picture is the dark region in the middle and with a shining edge.
A shiny edge, like a little ring, right?
Little ring outside of the object. So what they really pictured is a dark center. Okay, so and my interpretation is what's in the dark center? The theory said it must have a supermassive black hole. You cannot see, even light cannot out. I said, no, the reason it's a dark center because it is absent any materials, any stars. So there's no lights because it's empty. Wow. Just like a hurricane eyes. Anybody live in Florida, you've been through so many hurricanes evacuation. You know what's happening when hurricane approach to the Florida. First, the edge to approach Florida with huge winds, right? However, when the center, that's the eye of the hurricane, reach to the shore above your head house, you know what? The sky is bright blue, and there's so calm. There is no wind, almost just like living in a vacuum. Mm-hmm. It's so clear because rotation. Any object has a mass is already rotated outside of the center. At the center, it's nearly vacuum state. Right. So, which is the same thing happens to the black hole. There's no mass in the between.
That's interesting. So there is no black hole at the center of the galaxy in your mind.
That's correct. However, people might ask, well, without the black hole, all the mathematical calculation is why the galaxy is still holding together and rotating, right? Holding together. My interpretation is because the star systems around the black hole, see, in this is a quasar or all the shining star system. These objects, this system, they have a magnetic attraction between them. Just like you have a hurricane, you can have cars or cows being rotated around the edge of the eye, nothing in it. But why it can rotate in the edge of the eye? Because of low pressure in the middle. So that's why high pressure outside. So that pressure pushing all the objects around the eye. In this case, this is a magnetic force, attraction force between them. So these are attraction force and much, much higher than gravitational force. So that's why we say, oh, black hole has to be a millions or even billions of times higher mass gravitational force than the sun. In this case, if we use magnetic force can be billions and billions more stronger than gravity force. It can explain this one.
So it's magnetism, which is what we need to be using, not gravity, for explaining what holds galaxies together, right?
That's correct. So the difference between gravity and magnetism, gravity is based on the Newton's law, calculated. It's based on calibrate all the objects in solar system. It's more like a neutral material attract each other. Of course, neutral material attracts the force much less than magnetic objects attract each other.
Let's take a break. We're listening to Science and You with Dr. You. That's part of our A Neighbor's Choice radio show. You can catch every Science and You episode on aneighborschoice.com. You can also email us, hello@aneighborschoice.com, if you have a question related to any topic, but just let us know if it's a Science and You question, and we'll read it on air. Back in just a moment with more. Hello, this is David Gornoski with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a 6th-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR.
Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck in a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
Do you despise lawyers? That may be the case until you need one. If you've been in an auto accident and need legal advice, go to the local attorneys that have served Tampa Bay families for over 28 years. Catania and Catania. They are family owned. They understand your legal situation. When you need legal representation, Catania and Catania will care for your case from the beginning to the end of representation. You won't need to worry. Catania and Catania will represent you through the entire process. Auto or motorcycle accidents are too frequent in Florida. Catania and Catania. They don't get paid if you don't get paid. Referrals on request. Contact Catania and Catania. Putting families first. Offices, Tampa. An attorney spokesperson.
You can't have a fresh outlook on the new year if you're staring through a chipped or cracked windshield. Autoglass America will fix it and give you up to $150 cash back to help pay holiday bills. With qualifying insurance, we'll come to you with mobile service and install a premium quality replacement with a lifetime warranty at no cost to you. Get a great outlook on the new year with a new windshield and New Year's cash from Autoglass America. 813-96-GLASS, 813-96-GLASS.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gornoski, your host. I want to give a shout out to our friends at OakleyTransport.com. Oakley Transport is a wonderful group of people that are dedicated to keeping America fed, keeping stores stocked with the foods you care about, the foods that you rely on, and they're looking for qualified, safe drivers committed to excellence who want to take on a career like they have to offer with the driving programs they have. You can refer a driver. You can get involved with them at OakleyTransport.com. That's OakleyTransport.com, and let them know that A Neighbor's Choice sent you. And so we return now to our Science and You segment with Dr. Yu, our co-host here for this time, and looking at another story. It says, is nuclear fusion the answer to the climate crisis? And it says that there's a new study suggests the long elusive technology may be capable of producing electricity for the grid by the end of the decade. And this is a story in The Guardian. If all goes as planned, the U.S. will eliminate all greenhouse gas emissions from its electricity sector by 2035, an ambitious goal set by President-elect Joe Biden, relying in a large part on a sharp increase in wind and solar energy generation. That plan may soon get a boost from nuclear fusion, a powerful technology that until recently has seemed far out of reach. The new reactor still remains in early development. Scientists hope it will be able to start producing electricity by the end of the decade. Martin Greenwald, one of the project's senior scientists, said a key motivation for the ambitious timeline is meeting energy requirements in a warming world. Fusion seems like one of the possible solutions to get ourselves out of our impending climate disaster. Nuclear fusion, the physical process that powers our sun, occurs when atoms are pushed together at extreme high temperatures and pressure, causing them to release tremendous amounts of energy by merging into heavier atoms. And it goes on to basically say that Biden's $2 trillion plan he named advanced nuclear technologies as part of the decarbonization strategy. The first time Democrats have endorsed the nuclear energy thing since 1972. There's also significant investment coming from private sources, including major oil and gas companies who see fusion as a better long-term pivot than wind and solar. What do you think of this, Dr. Yu? Do you think that nuclear fusion is the future for solving people concerned with pollution?
Could be. But why I did not say it definitely will be this one, because right now the fusion technology heading to a wrong direction, because there's a huge flaws in our nuclear theory, and especially the fusion theory is flawed. So based on current theory, everything go. I know the whole world try to solving this fusion problem. Based on the current theory, say if you can fuse two lighter elements to be a heavier elements, it can release huge energy. Based on the measurement, they say, if we combine two lighter elements, which we can chemically measure, and then we find out, we find that the combined mass actually less than the sum of individual mass. So that's the current nuclear theory founded on this observation. Say, oh, if we can fuse two lighter mass together, use how to fuse together to overcome the repulsion force, electromagnetic repulsion force, they use high energy. Push higher energy to force them together. It's higher than electromagnetic repulsion. So that's why we use high heat, high laser to generate millions of degrees, even hundreds of millions of degrees, so many times higher than the sun. Try to fuse them together. That's all the experiment based on this theory, and try to get nuclear fusion. Never succeeded. Every article you read, every single nuclear fusion reactor they build it always tell you 20 years or 50 years away. Why then this happens in the past over 70 years? Why we always 20 or 50 years away? Because there is one problem we cannot overcome. When you have higher temperature, high heat goes in there with a millions of degrees of heat. No materials exist on Earth can hold this one without melting. So that's why all the energy try to say how we direct the heat away from the wall of the fusion reactor. That's where all the energy, and it can never solve. And this is a spiral. That's a spiral. It can never solve, no matter how advantageous never solve. So that's why fusion never materialized. And what I think the true fusion energy is not from a combined lighter elements form and create more energy. You think about it. You never ever you can tie these two together. You have more energy come out of two things binding together. You only can have more energy when you release all the individual parts, and then all the parts are in motion. That gives you the maximum energy. So-called fusion energy is come not from the fusing together, actually from split subatomic particles. So that's actually just like a fission, but it's kind of fission energy come from the nuclear split of nucleus.
Yeah, and it's just an example of why we cannot rely on government and politics to pick our science for us, because look, you've just explained in a very succinct way a fundamental problem with the whole foundation for how they're trying to achieve nuclear energy, and that it's a wrong-headed approach that's based on inherited sacred cows of how the physical world is supposed to work, but not actually based in real evidence. And so if we had more freedom, if we had more competition of ideas, people could sort out alternative forms of exploring nuclear energy, the so-called nuclear fusion, and they perhaps wouldn't have to require billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars in handouts from the government to make it affordable. So thanks again, Dr. Yu, for your time. It's always great having you on our program.
You're very welcome.
Back in just a moment with Tho Bishop.
Crazy things are happening.
You cannot be afraid. You've got to stand up for what you believe is right.
But one thing is for sure.
You can't trust anybody.
For talk, news, and information, you can count on us.
Enough is enough. I mean, I almost blew a gasket.
Good for the country.
I know what I'm talking about. A lot of wackos out there.
2 week's inauguration of President-elect Biden. Federal authorities are warning all 50 states to be on heightened alert ahead of Inauguration Day. Virginia Governor Ralph Northam's message to anyone who's thinking about traveling to the region to start trouble:
you need to turn around right now and go home. You are not welcome here, and you're not welcome in our nation's capital. And if you come here and act out, Virginia will be ready.
The Biden transition team is encouraging Americans to attend the events virtually, not in person. A Delaware man photographed carrying a Confederate flag during last week's deadly attack on the Capitol is under arrest. Kevin Seafried and his son Hunter, who was also at the Capitol, were charged with several offenses. President-elect Biden will outline his COVID-19 action plan in an address to the nation tonight. Daria Albinger, ABC News.
A Neighbor's Choice returns. I'm David Gornoski, your host. Our website, aneighborschoice.com. Our email, hello@aneighborschoice.com. You can continue to find us on YouTube and Facebook, our podcast platforms, or our website at neighborschoice.com. And now we're joined by our friend from the Mises Institute. He's the one of the editors there at Mises.org, Tho Bishop. How you doing, Tho?
Doing great, David. Thank you for having me.
Great. And I know you're in the Central Florida area today, right? You're near us.
Yes. On one of my non-Mises Institute gigs, I'm a vice chairman for the Bay County Republican Party up here in the Panhandle. So there's a Republican Party of Florida meeting down in Orlando this weekend. So down here for that, and interested to see how that all turns out.
So why are you a Republican?
Well, I think that, particularly now, I think the political world has become so interesting. I mean, what we're seeing is that it's the awareness, I think, of the American right, and a lot of conservatives, I think, might have been naive to the danger of the federal government. You know, there's a lot of belief for decades, right, that, if we simply elect enough, right Republicans to the federal government, we'll restore the Constitution and save the republic. And I think that was never a winning proposition. The federal government we have now, the deep state, this professional, bureaucratic class. This is a product of decades of thought. I mean, the revolutionary actions of FDR in the progressive era. I've never been a big proponent of it, but now you're starting to see that Republicans are getting serious about the fact that elections at the federal level are not enough. State level, local level, building institutions in your community. This is the actual way of trying to stop the authoritarian left that has so many of the institutions of power, not simply in the federal government now, but in big tech, big corporations, Wall Street, etc. And so I've never been more comfortable as a Republican, even though obviously I've been a very lowercase L libertarian for just about my entire adult life.
Right. So when you look at the media landscape, I have to ask you, why is it that the media only gives good coverage to Republicans who are viciously pro-war? Liz Cheney, Dan Crenshaw, Meghan McCain, the only voices, Dan Crenshaw goes on Saturday Night Live, Meghan McCain has a daytime show where they still they kind of gang up on her, but at least she's part of the table. She's got a seat at the table, literally. And a lot of the folks that are the token Republicans that bash Trump on CNN and so forth are always the biggest war hawks for never-ending occupation of people of color overseas. And yet the liberals that own these networks say that they are for the emancipation of all oppressed peoples. So why is it that they support people who send drone strikes on U.S. citizens? Why are a Muslim young man, like a 16-year-old kid, that was killed by Barack Obama and John Brennan? Why are those the Republicans that the media celebrates?
Because they fit the agenda, right? I mean, they are at perhaps best case scenario. They're simply useful idiots for this globalist left that has an agenda of strengthening the bureaucratic class within Washington, and one of the best ways to do that is the war spending, the military-industrial complex, the buildup of power that comes in war. The other side of it is where Republicans are also useful for the media, and they'll get the pats on the head, is when they're used to attack other Republicans. You've seen it in clear form this week. It's not simply Liz Cheney that's getting all these accolades because she took this very bold, patriotic stance to impeach the president against the will of all of her voters, and it's because you've had these the freshman members of Congress like Nancy Mace in South Carolina, who can spend her entire campaigning as a Donald Trump supporter. Now, 2 weeks into the gig, is one of the top attack dogs against Trump supporters in Washington. They are useful to those ends. And what's interesting is that for all of this, for weeks now, we've heard about the secret nature of democracy. Well, guess what? How is it a demonstration of democracy when representatives that have run on one thing, change their mind as soon as they get in the halls of power? Like, this is one of the things that I think really is dangerous, actually, because what you have is that the media wants you to believe that if we simply look down upon and ignore Trump America, and then we're going to get back to normal. Obviously, that's not going to happen. What's going to happen is if Trump America feels that politics isn't the way of remedying their grievances with their government, then they're going to start looking at non-political action. We saw non-political action last week when you had certain Trump supporters believe that they are being betrayed by the political process. And what's scary is that when people completely lose faith of the political system, that creates a lot of frustration and chaos and things that are dangerous. And so that's why what we need more of in politics are people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Georgia, who, of course, the press will tell you is a nut job, right? Oh, she's a cute congresswoman. Well, or Lauren Boebert over in Colorado, who's a very promising freshman legislator. They want to try to make these people unacceptable, when in fact these people are some of the few representatives that tens of millions of Americans have. And if you want to try to lower the temperature in politics, you should want those people there, because at least now you have a lot of people that can look to them and say, they represent me. I don't know if my congressman does, but they do. And it gives them some buy-in in the process. But that's not what they want. The left does not want, the powers that be do not want genuine democracy. They want democracy by ceremony, as a way of rubber stamping the true power brokers, which is the bureaucratic class in Washington.
So you're saying that the media props up the warmonger Republicans the most just because they're the most opposed to the populists and Ron Paul type voices out there? Is that why they do it? Just because they're the loudest voices who are against those folks, or is it because the media also likes to promote war as well as they do?
No, it's because of both. It's because, for one, they're useful attacks on Donald Trump. One of the reasons they hated Donald Trump was because of his foreign policy, his America First agenda. And then on the flip side of it, it's the fact that you have a lot of these corporations that benefit from the international scope of the American empire.
Yeah.
And so they fit. They check a lot of boxes for these people, and so they get all the pats on the head. And if they ever go out of line, then they get destroyed. And that's the way the media enforces these things.
So why is it that they have like the Say Their Name campaign for George Floyd, but they don't have it for Anwar al-Awlaki's 16-year-old son that was shot to death by Barack Obama? Why can't we say his name? How come that didn't catch on with the media, though?
Yeah, it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit the proper narrative, and that's. It's the same thing where you're seeing it play out, particularly in a state like Florida. You see the nature of the news coverage on Ron DeSantis' handling of COVID. They'll give accolades to Andrew Cuomo, but they'll demonize Ron DeSantis. It's because they really don't care about human lives. They don't care about George Floyd. They don't care about the victims of these policies. They care about the narrative they can spin from victims in order to achieve a political end. And that's one of the great things that we're seeing in the era right now is the lack of legitimacy the media has.
Right. Yeah, it's
America. This is a good thing because they aren't able to manufacture false consent, which is what they were able to do back when you had three networks all parroting similar lines. I mean, this is an actual opportunity for a true discussion of ideas. And this is also why they want nothing more than to try to censor social media and try to restore the gatekeepers in a new digital age.
Mm-hmm. I look at this, on your Twitter page at Tho Bishop, you were quoting a Tom Bevan at Real Clear Politics. He had results of a focus group of 40 Trump supporters last night in Cincinnati, who listened to 6 people describe being at the rally in D.C. on January 6th. And it said 77% said they support Trump even more, that their support for Trump is increasing. So that kind of goes to your point, though, that if you want to try to stomp out 75 million people or so's voices by force and try to turn them all into Osama bin Laden, that it's going to backfire and make people even more supportive of Trump. People who maybe didn't even like Trump may actually take another look at him because they say, what is so bad about this guy? He didn't kill as many people as Barack Obama. Why is he the murderer? Why is he the killer?
Right. One of the advantages that we have right now is that the people in power, they are so isolated with so much of America that it clouds their ability to be good at their agenda. It's considering their agenda, I find genuinely quite troubling. This is a good thing. I think back in the 60s and 70s that the people in power were just as evil as they are now. They were just much better at it. And it's their inability to empathize with, again, the sort of people that are gravitating to Trump, I think opens them to a major blind spot because they think that, they're doing damage to Donald Trump by portraying these narratives the way they are. No, what ends up happening, the people know, Trump supporters know who they cannot trust right now, and it's the presidency establishment. I mean, again, you're seeing, I think the next 2 years politically is going to be a very fascinating dynamic of Trump supporters really cleaning out the Republican Party of that old, the McConnell wing that they don't feel has defended them the past 3 months. And the media, I think, is also reflecting with this. They're convinced that, nobody's going to support Trump now after this. Well, they will. They continue. They will continue to do so. And also, I think what you're seeing is that all of these moves that the Pelosi, Biden, Harris administration is going to try to crack down on Trump America. You have so many DC staffers that are convinced that they've just lived through the second 9/11. After last week's events. Ridiculous. They are underestimating the consequences of trying to paint such a large a part of the American population beyond you're trying to dehumanize tens of millions of people. You might be able to get away with that with some fringe groups here and there. They've been doing this for decades, right? They try to identify a group, and then they dehumanize the group, and then they justify any sort of ATF, Ruby Ridge sort of style tactics against them. This now is very different. We're trying to do against tens of millions of people. The majority of several of states, consider like Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, they're going to have a very difficult time. And again, it's an arrogance of those in power not appreciating the significance of legitimacy and trust in these intangible aspects that really end up being the cornerstone of political order. They I think, are going to start stumbling into things that they're not going to really be able to control in these next few years.
Mm-hmm. And then you can't forget the 100 million Americans who don't vote. What are they thinking? It's not just the 74 or 75 million people who voted for Trump who are now watching the television try to spin this man as Osama bin Laden. Meanwhile, they were laughing and mocking Donald Trump when the White House was under siege, right? It's so pathetic. And they think that 100 million people who didn't vote and the 74 million people who voted for Trump somehow can't see that stupidity and that evil. They think that they just can't see it. It's insane. You're right. The hubris and the bigotry, and we have to call it what it is. This is bigotry to treat human beings like this. Yes. It's awful that this riot happened. Everybody knows it's awful. But the difference is the bigots that run these television networks, they want to make the riots that happened in the White House okay. And that's where they make their fatal mistake, because no life should be treated as expendable for some kind of religiosity for the worship of the state that these elites and these wannabe elites have this worshipful resonance for any agenda or any riot. You saw the flames going up all over DC when Trump was being inaugurated. And if that was Obama, or if it was Biden now and you saw flames up, they say, oh my gosh, this is worse than the Capitol attack. But because it's a bunch of people who are for corporate fascism that helps the giant corporations that the media is in bed with, nothing, not a big deal, just a few temper tantrums, don't worry about it, it's still a good cause, right? And people have just had enough of this garbage.
Yeah. And the beauty of it is that juxtapositioning the CNN's message on last week versus all their coverage of all the riots and all the damage and violence that you've seen in the last 12 months. These people have no shame. When you had a left-wing extremist try to assassinate multiple members of the House Republican caucus, the Republican Congressional Caucus generally at the baseball game several years ago, the very next day you had talking heads on CBS and other outlets. It isn't like the Young Turks. I mean, these are mainstream outlets questioning out loud whether Steve Scalise's rhetoric or the rhetoric of the Republican Party somehow justified what was an attempted mass shooting. These people have no shame, and I think a lot of these people don't even realize the absurdity of what they're doing. They're so out of touch. And again, their ability to have some sort of moral high ground is to have the ability of really shaping the way Americans those Americans still capable of critical thought view these sort of things. They are destroying it for themselves, and in many ways, that is one of the great legacies, I think, of the Trump era, is that the reaction to Trump has often done more than anything that Trump's been able to achieve legislatively. And all of Trump's enemies have shown themselves to be the dangerous, pathetic frauds that they are. And for that, I'll always be grateful.
Yeah, and we'll take a quick break, but when we return, we're going to ask Tho Bishop of Mises.org, MISES.org is their website. We'll ask Tho, what do you think Mitch McConnell's going to do with this impeachment headed to the Senate? And, where this is all going to go in the world of social media now that they've shown their colors to be book burner fascist all the way, deleting tons and tons of accounts that aren't even related to the issues that they are using as their excuse. So we'll be back in just a moment after this short break. Hello, this is David Gornoski with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality, grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a 6th-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR.
Some out-of-the-area law firms advertise that they are the largest. Do you think large firms help your case? Possibly, but your case will receive personal care from local attorneys Catania and Catania. They are family-owned, Tampa Bay attorneys representing clients who have experienced auto and motorcycle accidents. Your case with Catania and Catania will seek to get a settlement in your favor expeditiously. Catania and Catania, serving Tampa Bay families for over 28 years. Referrals on request. Get the local law firm that will care for your case from beginning to end. They don't get paid if you don't get paid. Catania and Catania, putting families first. Car accident, motorcycle accident, call the local attorneys. Catania and Catania. Offices Tampa. Not attorney spokesperson.
Hi, this is Gary from Good Faith Home Buyers, and I buy houses cash. If you own your house and want to sell it fast, call me at 727-330-6224. That's 727-330-6224. I can pay cash and close fast. I buy houses in any condition, any price range, and any location. I'm not a realtor or associated with any realty company. I'm a private real estate investor who buys several houses a month and wants to buy more. I'll buy inherited houses, divorce houses, behind in payment houses. I'll even buy my tenant won't pay me the rent houses. Do you own a house that is trashed and needs thousands of dollars in repairs? Great, because I love buying junky houses. I buy vacant houses, abandoned houses, condemned houses, and foreclosure houses. If you own a house and want to sell it fast, call me at 727-330-6224. That's 727-330-6224.
Neighbor's Choice is back. I'm David Gornoski here with Tho Bishop of the Mises Institute. They're a free market research group and expositor of Austrian school economics. You can visit their website, Mises, MISES.org, or follow Tho at Tho Bishop on Twitter. So Tho, first with the Mitch McConnell situation, this impeachment, I feel like Trump has broken almost every sacred cow for the neoliberal establishment. It's like he's ruined the power and aura of the impeachment. It's so weak looking now. It's so impotent. And it's like I told someone the other day, it's like he's Rasputin. They're doing everything they can to get rid of him, and it doesn't seem to do the effect that they thought it would, right? And if you understood anthropology and mimetic theory, we understand what's happening, that the more a society which is exposed to Christianity, the more they recoil. And that doesn't mean that we're at the highest zenith of Christianity, but it's baked into our sense-making and our institutions and our storytelling and our aesthetic. And the more people see someone as a scapegoat, they are prone to say, hey, I may not like that guy so much, but I don't like what you guys are doing to mob up against them and try to delete them from history. And it kind of creates a recoiling effect. And these people, like you said, they're not that bright. They don't understand that if you try to stamp out something, it makes it more powerful. It becomes like a martyr's perch from which they gain energy, even if they are bad people or whatever. And these fools don't understand this, though. So what do you think is going to happen with Mitch McConnell? Is he going to go through and try to convict Trump in the Senate, or how's that going to work? I guess it would be Chuck Schumer's baby at that point, right?
Right. Yeah. It sounds like there's going to be nothing done between now and January 20th, which is that is a good move for McConnell, just to be able to kind of punt that ball. I think that he's also in very unfamiliar territories now. With given the splits in the last week, he's probably never been in a weaker position within the party. Now, of course, the opinion of the voters as a whole is very different than the positioning within D.C. itself, which is why Liz Cheney is the third top Republican in the GOP right now on the House side. But it is going to be interesting to see what Schumer tries to do. Whether they're going to try to impeach him after the fact. There is historical setting for that. 1876, you had a member of the Grant administration that was impeached after leaving office. So it is technically possible. But what we're seeing is again, for all these people in D.C. that were concerned about Trump trampling on political norms and breaking things that set dangerous precedents for the future, the reaction from these very same people towards Trump is their own version of breaking a variety of different political norms and standings. And it's so much of what really makes American government work. It's not the law. It's not the Constitution. It's not the written word. It's these informal, unwritten norms. And again, the reaction, and one of those is that, again, you don't change election laws outside of normal procedure right before an election, because that can cause question and sow doubt in the results. And we're all dealing with the ramifications of governments that have done that very same thing, right? And so we've seen for years now this escalation of breaking and ignoring and getting rid of political norms that the consequence is this kind of tension in the air on exactly, where are we politically as a country?
Right. And then from the other big issue I want to get your take on real quick, the social media stuff where they're deleting Trump and, all these prominent conservatives off the face of the earth, walk away. I thought the walk away thing was, just a group that was trying to get Democrats to leave the Democratic Party, and now they're deleted off of Facebook and different Sidney Powell and so forth. So what do you think is going to happen with that? There's the Democrats aren't going to fix what's not broken for them. This is working very conveniently for them. So the idea that there's going to be some kind of legislative fix that we would like to bring them back into alignment with what everybody else has to act like as a publisher seems far off. So what would you say in this moment is going to happen?
I one of the issues with I think that it is a very serious topic to grapple with, and I think I've been frustrated with two different camps. For one, libertarians that simply fall into the things like, oh, well, they're private companies, and so what are you going to do? They can do whatever they want. Well, it's true, they are private companies, but I think that there's been people that have kind of gleefully enjoyed defending censorship. And these are illiberal actions at their core, regardless of what they legally have the right to do. We need to talk about, how do we handle illiberal large corporations in a serious manner. On the other side, the traditional conservative approach has been very popular. Is get rid of 230. Immunity, nationalize, some of the more extreme populist right people go nationalize these companies. Well, guess what? Nationalizing big tech is not going to end up benefiting conservative thought either. The fairness doctrine on radio was not good for people that had opinions outside of the acceptable realms of a thought. Right? That's not the answer either. I think that. Jeff Dice has looked a lot about the, perhaps a tort as a solution there when you have people, when you have inconsistent handling of customer service agreements. We're not simply getting a free service out of the goodness of their own hearts. I mean, there is a two-way street there with data and things like that. I'm interested in those sort of solutions. But the other thing, though, is that states like Florida, which have tremendous amount of economic leverage right now. The same way that a few years ago, the Florida state legislature did pass a law leveraging the state's economic capacity against firms that wanted to boycott Israel. Now, regardless of what you think about that issue, that's a model for, you could do the same sort of thing on making sure that no state pension funds are invested in big tech companies that censor, that engage in political censorship. Similar where Hollywood and California.
So we're out of time. Yeah, we're out of time. But
thank you, David.
All right, very good. Check them out at Mises.org. That's Mises.org. I'm David Gornoski. Godspeed.